Hi, okay, so I'm going to be explaining my backwards lesson design plan um, for the writing section. And so this lesson plan that I created um, will basically be targeted towards the middle school ages, somewhere around there. Um, and then also like about 20 students. And then the title of my lesson is called use sentences to create a story. And so basically in this lesson that I have created, I'm going to be helping the English language learners, I can't speak English, the English language learners build that foundation of being able to write and complete sentences. Um, and I feel like at least if I have learned a language, Spanish in the past, I've realized that um, kind of like listening and reading are kind of some of the easier ones, and then writing and the grammar within writing and making sure that it's correct, and then also speaking are kind of one of the harder things to grasp, at least for me as I learned a second language. And so I think this writing lesson um, will really help those students to kind of build on that knowledge that they know prior to this and in the classes that they have, taken before. And so this lesson will kind of build on that foundation that they have and help them to um, be able to write a little bit more complex sentences, but still at like a very kind of lower, um, like a beginning kind of intermediate beginner level, middle beginner. Um, and so kind of these objectives and outcomes for this lesson plan is know vocabulary essential to be able to fully participate in the lesson. And so like just vocabulary words such as flipbook, story, sentence, so the students know what, we're talking about, know what these things mean, and can build on that. And then language learning strategies to aid in comprehension. And so like being able to use context clues is a big one. It's kind of questioning, especially making predictions as they read, um, and then as I have to write. And lastly, to be able to write in full sentences in English to create a storyline, and so not just kind of writing random sentences, but to kind of learn how to connect sentences together to make a story. And so students will know how to write in full sentences in English, work within a group, listen and follow instructions, and create a story, not by themselves, but with their classmates. And the students will also be able to write in full sentences using proper grammar and spelling. Um, and I think for me, as I learned a second language, I could write in full sentences decently as long as I kind of like started memorizing those ways to answer back depending on the question. Um, but spelling is always difficult. It does kind of just have to be memorized spelling, finding ways to remember. Um, and then proper grammar is definitely a difficult one that I think, um, it's difficult when you're learning a second language because the grammar is very different usually from the first. And so, um, all those new rules and things. And so I think that this will um, kind of be that gateway kind of so that the students will be able to eventually learn those rules. But for now, just kind of helping them make very simple, complete sentences. So just so that they can know how to write in full sentences in English and then kind of build up to learning each rule individually later on. Um, and so I'm going to explain my stage 3 before my stage 2, just so it makes a little bit more sense. Um, and so for the learning activities for this um, lesson that I've created is first having the students start with a kind of journal writing warm up. So I just kind of imagined that each student would have their own little notebook and I would have them kind of write in their journal maybe every day, or draw a picture if it's very beginner um, learners. And so basically just kind of getting that opportunity to at least try to write anything. And so for this specific one, I think that it would be important to have simple but very specific and direct prompts and like questions for them to answer. Um, in order to use in their activity so that those two activities kind of flow into each other, create that transition. And so basically, the students will choose one of the prompt questions that I have written below, and they'll have about like 5 to 7 minutes, not too long, but just enough time to write as much as they possibly can and kind of put all they know on that paper, um, and try their best to write in complete sentences, just getting that time to just kind of write about their opinion, their beliefs, their experiences, um, and using the vocab that they do know in English to do so. And so they'll be doing that in their personal journal. And so the prompts that I kind of came up with, it can really be any prompts, but I felt that these ones were um, very simple, but that they could um, lead to discussion, and you can make them more complicated depending on how much vocabulary words you know and how you, if you know how to express yourself and your experiences um, in that target language. And so there is a lot of ways that you can go with these questions. And so the first one is, what did you do this past weekend? What do you like to do? What is your favorite memory? What is your favorite animal and why? Where are you from? And what do you dislike or like about it? Um, and so each of these, you could be like, I am from Mexico. I like that there is a beach there, or I like the food. So, or you could, go on and explain the food or explain the beach, or what parts of Mexico you're from. So just like as like an example, that it could be very simple, but then you can kind of see where that student is at depending on how in detail they're able to answer the question. And so first after those questions, these students will then kind of, read over the sentences that they wrote and pick um, one sentence that they wrote. And so basically, they will then make a flip book. So this is kind of a little flip book Pictionary, not exactly Pictionary, but there is, drawing and a storyline involved. And so basically, each student will create a little flip book using papers, and so just kind of staple papers together, and then be able to flip them up and open it to different parts of a story. Um, and so it can kind of depend on the age of the students and their level, their you know what kind of level they're at the language. And so it doesn't have to be 10 different flips or pieces of paper, so like 10 pages of the story. It could be 5, it could be only a few, just kind of, it depends. So I just said 10 flips, um, and then they will write their name on the front of the flip book because each person will have their own, and then on the first flip up, the student will write the complete sentence that they came up with for one of the questions, and draw a little picture with it. And then once each student has done that, make the first page of their book, then the books will be passed around the classroom so that their classmates will fill out the rest of the book. And so each student is going to have to, rely on their English reading skills first, um, to read the pages before them that their classmates did, and then add a sentence to that story. Um, and so I think it's just a really kind of fun way for any age to kind of just like show what they know, write it, write about it, and then be able to go off of that from reading others and just create a story. Um, and it can kind of, get their imagination going as well. So um, I don't know, I just kind of, I think that it would be engaging and hopefully beneficial as well. Um, and so by the end, each student's flip book, once they're full, they will be passed back to the original owner of the book. And so each class member will have their own little flip book. They can kind of, go through the story that their classmates um, made for them based on their first sentence and picture. They can read it and then come up with a title for that book, what they think the title should be, depending on what their classmates wrote about and how the story ended. And so I think that it gives them kind of like it's that free range of imagination to, um, again, use that vocabulary that they know in English, have to rely on, those things to create a title for their story. Um, and so that can go, on the front cover, so they can make their front cover of the book and the first page, and then the rest will be their classmates. And so I think it's just a really interesting idea of how um, it's very collaborative, can help them communicate with each other through writing. Um, and so basically, I'll kind of be able to accept you know, this evidence that they truly are learning, um, because each student will turn in their flip book, um, and they'll be graded on their title and then their first page, um, of that book. Um, just kind of the pages that they did, not their classmates. But each individual student, I can read over the sentence that they wrote, make sure it's a complete sentence, um, kind of check grammar, and then I can kind of gauge and see the things that a lot of the students are struggling with in the classroom, so we can go over that. Um, and so basically, I'll be kind of looking for, complete sentence, minimal spelling and grammar errors, and then obviously before the lesson, um, these students will have needed to practice writing sentences before. Maybe not full, complete sentences, but at least a basic vocabulary of how to structure a sentence in English. Um, and so I think it'd be a very good idea to kind of have these up on the board and kind of go over them. And so these are kind of the complete sentence example kind of templates for the prompt questions below. And so this past weekend, I blank. I like to blank because blank. And so it kind of pushes the student to um, use this format. And I feel like it makes more sense. It makes it more simple. But then they have their kind of free um, range to figure out which vocabulary words they do know and how they can use that to explain their opinion or what they like or things like that. And so I think that the because in most of these sentences is really important too. Um, because then it won't just be, my favorite animal is a chicken, but they'd have to just an example of chicken, but that they would have to explain it, which I think really pushes um, them to, just use the vocabulary that they do know and write about it and just get that experience of writing and learning. And so, yeah, that is all. And I hope this lesson is going to be beneficial and helpful for the students I will teach one day.